Welcome back to the show. Jeff, Eric, breaking down everything that you need to know about your fantasy football matchups for this weekend. Eric bringing the excellent analysis on the football tip, and we're going to jump right back into it. Tennessee goes to Houston in a big-time AFC South divisional matchup. Tennessee suffered a little bit of a scare last week when Vince Young got injured. Why don't you give me your take on what's going on here in this game? I know that if Houston wins, they move up a half a game on Tennessee, so it's a big-time game.
Yeah, this is one of those rivalries. You got the old Houston Oilers, now the Tennessee Titans, going back to Houston. Their owner, Bud Adams, still lives in Houston, Texas. I think he's a neighbor with Robert McNair, who owns the Texans, if you can figure that all out. And I believe George Bush Sr. lives on that block, too. So there might be a little bit of money down there where those guys hang out. But I'm leaning toward the Houston Texans. This will be fun. Vince Young going back to Houston where he grew up. I hope he's A-OK physically. Tennessee lost a tough one last week to the Tampa Bay Bucks down there in Tampa. So I'm going to go with Houston. I don't know why, but they're at home.
Yes, Houston's surprisingly competitive. They're like the lapdog that you don't think is going to do anything, and then all of a sudden it bites you in the throat and takes you down. So I think Houston has a great chance, although I don't think there's going to be a lot of scoring here in this game. To me, the only fantasy plays you can rely on from Houston are Owen Daniels, the tight end, and Chris Brown, the kicker. Not sure who's going to play running back-wise for the Texans. The one big note here for the Tennessee Titans is Chris Brown is injured, unlikely to play, so Lindell White will finally get his chance to be featured and should perform well in a game that they're going to need him if they're going to want to win in the division. So we'll see. It'll be an interesting game. Both teams with 3 losses, and the winner looking forward, the loser obviously out in the cold. Tampa Bay brings its all of a sudden potent offense out to Detroit. Detroit's no pushover this year either. Is it really true that with a win, Detroit moves into just one game behind the Packers?
The Lions could go to 4-2. The Packers
Crazy.
5-1 with a bye. This is a big game for both teams. I mean, the Tampa Bay Bucks are tied for first with Carolina in the NFC South. This is one of those games I'll be eyeballing because is Tampa Bay for real? I mean, that was a big win against Tennessee last week. Tennessee's a solid team. Can they go into Detroit in the dome? On the artificial surface, the field turf, can they stop a Mike Martz-led offense? I mean, Detroit offensively is very good, although they're coming off a bye and then a 3-point game where they got slaughtered in Washington a couple of weeks ago. So I'm leaning toward Detroit. This will be one that I'm curious as to see who wins it.
Yeah. It seems like when the bye weeks happen, some teams come out from their bye real hot, and then some teams come out and they seem like they're a little hungover, like they had a little too much fun over their bye week. Copyright 2005, and I'll leave it at that. I worry about that for the Lions here in this game. It's interesting to me that Kevin Jones back at the starter position now. He's a decent start here in this game because if you can beat Tampa, it's when you run right at them, and it makes me think that Kevin Jones is a decent start to get you a touchdown. On the other side of the ball, I like Ernest Graham here in this game. I think he should get into the end zone. Tampa Bay, I'm picking them to win, Eric. I know you're not quite on the same page as me. You like Detroit here.
I do. Detroit has a lot of weapons, and they're much better at Ford Field than when they go on the road, especially when they're outside. They're a little bit like the Vikings. They're creatures of comfort. I mean, the Vikings were kind of out of their shell last week to win a game on grass, outside on the road in Chicago. Real quickly, maybe Calvin Johnson now feels like he needs to raise his game with Adrian Peterson playing as well as he is, because it's weird to say it, but if they redrafted now, I'm not sure Adrian Peterson isn't the top pick overall.
Yeah, I mean, with the way Jamarcus Russell is kind of still coming, he came in so late, it's going to take him a while to learn. Calvin Johnson hasn't quite done his thing. It's an interesting point you bring up. They're going to need Calvin Johnson to step up if they want to continue to compete at the level that they've been at. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we know they've got offense. Even before they got Calvin Johnson, Kevin Jones is not a bad running back. But, again, it's too early to say, well, Calvin Johnson isn't going to be an impact guy. He might be. But stop and think about the Detroit Lions. If they had Adrian Peterson with the receivers they already had in place, Roy Williams, Mike Furry, and Mike Martz drawing up the plays.
Yeah.
It's something to think about because a lot of teams, 6 of them passed on AP.
Yeah, 6 teams passed on AP to our glee
Yeah.
and total enjoyment. It's been fantastic so far this season. And I'll tell you, it's okay with me if every like 8 minutes our show reverts back to Adrian Peterson.
Isn't that amazing?
I mean, we should just have a mandatory Adrian Peterson reference, every eight to 9 minutes. I think that would be okay. So it's going to be an interesting game. I don't know for sure, what I think about whether or not Tampa can actually win, although I would like to see them win, being a Vikings fan. Definitely don't want to see anybody else but us get the victory. Arizona going to Washington. Arizona suffering another quarterback loss last week. Now Tim Rattay might start. That's going to be tricky for Arizona. Tell me what you think about their offense going forward here if Rattay remains a starter.
Well, it's tough. I mean, you lose Matt Leinart, you lose Kurt Warner, now you've got Tim Rattay. The only good news for Tim Rattay, though, is, look, he's got weapons at his disposal. I mean, Larry Fitzgerald Jr. is outstanding. Anquan Bolden, Edgerrin James, the offensive line is better. But you know what? That was not a good loss for the Arizona Cardinals last week in Phoenix. Carolina comes in, and they trot out the fossil, Vinny Testaverde.
Amazing.
I mean, 43 years old, and he's able to not only beat the Cardinals, but they did it convincingly. So Arizona, I don't know who's going to win the NFC West. It's a mediocre division right now. 3-3 is the best record in the division, Arizona and Seattle. You've got San Francisco a half game out. The Rams are winless. But Arizona, that was a bad loss last week.
Yeah, it definitely was. I want to take 1 second right here to make a very big point from this game. In my opinion, there's a lot of sell-high players. I think that Washington, in their last week's game, they lost 3 offensive linemen to injury. Their offensive line is really banged up, and it's telling me and making me think that Clint Portis and the running game from Washington isn't going to have the room to run that they previously had. I'm worried that Washington, who's been on a high streak lately, is going to face some adversity here in the next few weeks. You can get a good premium for Clint Portis now. Go ahead and put him on the trading block, see what you can get. And the same thing said for the passing game from the Arizona Cardinals. Anquan Bolden popped for like 31 fantasy points a couple of weeks ago. Larry Fitzgerald has been really coming along nicely, and I just get the feeling with Rattay, he's a new addition to their team, so he's not going to be as acclimated to their offense. I just don't think he's going to have the chemistry that either Kurt Warner or Matt Leinart had, and there's been rumors that Warner is going to try to fight through the injury. But for right now, I think it's not a bad idea for all you guys out there who are invested in these special players. Move them and get the value for them now, because I worry that it's about to go in the tank.
I still like Washington, though. I mean, they've allowed 69 points, lowest in the NFC. Defense is always a great thing if you have it. You look at their losses. In Green Bay last week, Charles Woodson takes the fumble to the house.
Yep.
That's how they lost that game. Really, Brett Favre, I mean, he was high and away all game. Should have been about 5 picks for the Redskins in their defensive secondary. They did not make plays that they could have and normally do make. The other thing is, you look at their other loss. The Giants at home, I believe it was week 3, they had a chance to put the Giants out of the race. And remember, they went for the touchdown on the run late in the game. So Washington has lost 2 heartbreaking games, not far away from being a 5-0 team. If Washington is going to be a team that is good and make that next step, this is a game they got to win.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think they're going to bring their A game here. I really like Chris Cooley in this game. And if you have some bye week issues on the defensive side of the ball, the Redskins make a nice pickup, because if Rattay is under center, good chance he'll be throwing the ball right to Leron Landry a couple of times, I think. The inconspicuous and impossible to tell what they're going to do, Kansas City Chiefs are at the Oakland Raiders. Last weekend, we saw LaDainian Tomlinson absolutely torch the Raiders to the tune of 4 touchdowns. And because of that, I really like Larry Johnson this weekend. Eric, give me your feeling about how the Kansas City offense is going to fare here against the Black Hole.
Amazing. You called the league Rubik's Cube earlier in the show, and I think the Chiefs are the microcosm of what this league is all about. I can't get a handle on this football team. They're 3-3, tied for first in the division with the San Diego Chargers. They had that loss at home to Jacksonville. Then last week, they pretty much handled the Cincinnati Bengals. I think the one thing about Chiefs-Raiders, it's like Vikings-Packers. I mean, it's a big rivalry. They've been playing for a long time. So figure on some emotion. I think the Raiders will probably pull it out because they're at home, and they're an improved football team. That's just what my gut tells me. But I give up on trying to forecast the Kansas City Chiefs. 'Cause I never thought they'd go into San Diego and win the way they did.
Yeah, that was crazy. You can't tell what's going to happen with the Chiefs. I really like Tony Gonzalez here this weekend. He's setting records similar to what Brett Favre's doing, although he's been overshadowed by what Favre's doing. Gonzalez is about to go down as one of the best tight ends ever in the league. This could be his last season, especially if they miss the playoffs. But he's a great start for your fantasy team. Every time he catches a pass, every time he scores a touchdown now, goes in the record book. So keep him in your lineup. As far as Oakland is concerned, Lamont Jordan was rumored to not play in last week's game. He came back. He put up 80 all-purpose yards. And I think here in this game, they're going to rely on him a lot to put up the all-purpose yards. Again, they don't have much of a passing game there. You can't trust Ronald Curry, Jerry Porter, and Dante Culpepper. You never can tell what you're going to get with that guy either.
No, you don't know. And I'm sure this is a game the Chiefs think they can win.
Certainly.
But the Raiders, they played San Diego pretty tough last week. They lost 28-14 down in Southern California. I just think that if the Raiders are serious about becoming a better team, this is the kind of home game they have to win.
Most definitely. The New York Jets are at Cincinnati. Cincinnati suffering a pretty rough loss to the Chiefs last weekend. I think they get healthy in a big way. Eric, tell me what you think is going to happen here.
Well, I think the Cincinnati Bengals are going to win. Last week I know I talked about the mystery that has become the Bengals, and there's heat on this football team now. I mean, they go into Kansas City and lose. They're 1-4. They're in danger now, of falling out of this division in the AFC North. Pittsburgh's 4-1. Baltimore's 4-2. Cleveland's 3-3. Cleveland ranked on 51 on Cincinnati earlier this year. This is a must-win for the Bengals. If they lose this game, there might be some mid-season shakeups in Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Here's one stat of note. Chad Johnson is actually having kind of a quiet season, although he's second in the league in yardage with 578 yards, only 3 touchdowns. The touchdowns are going to the big lurch-looking like character, TJ Houshmandzadeh. 7 touchdowns so far already on the season. It makes me think that TJ might be better than Chad Johnson, or is it simply that Chad always gets the double team?
My guess would be that they load up on Chad first. I haven't seen in detail the video of the Bengal games. I've seen a couple Monday night games, but that's a good duo of receivers. Step back and look at that team: TJ, Chad Johnson, Carson Palmer, Rudy Johnson. Ask yourself how they're 1-4. I mean, to me, it's a mystery. I know defensively they've had issues, but they're underachieving. They have to be thinking that themselves. That's too good a quarterback, too good a wideouts to have only one win. So they better make sure they take care of business against the New York Jets, who come in with Chad Pennington. I think Shannon Sharp said his newspaper delivery girl has a better arm than Chad Pennington. So they better win that game.
That's some good smack talk right there. Everybody take notes for your league. That's excellent. Thomas Jones finally showed up in the NFL last week. He decided to come to the game, put up 130 yards, still did not get in the end zone. Tell me if you think, Eric, that the Jets are going to be able to run on Cincinnati here this week.
I think anything's possible. Defensively, the Bengals have not been able to stop teams this year. But the Jets are going to have to still be able to throw the football. My guess would be that the Bengals will score at least 30 in this game, so the Jets are going to find themselves in a shootout. I don't think they can win it.
Yeah, good chance that the Bengals get up early, which could take Thomas Jones out of the game. Personally, my bye week player of the week is Chad Pennington, just because they're going to be behind early. They're going to throw the ball a lot. I also really like Jericho Cotchery and Lavernia Skulls to score big-time points here in this game for your fantasy team as well. So 3 segments in the book. We've got 1 left to go. Make sure to tune back in with us. We're going to go to a quick break right now. We'll be right back. Testosterone Sports.